Cold Winter is an interesting game. I sort of went into it blind with very little information beyond the vague cover art and the development studio that worked on it. Cold Winter was developed by Swordfish Studios, who later went on to work on the excellent 50 Cent Blood on the Sand. I have a full review up on my channel for that one as well, link is in the description. It was published by Sierra exclusively for the PlayStation 2 in 2005. I found the game to be a bit of a mixed bag, and I want to explain my reasoning for that because every other reviewer I've seen on YouTube praises the game highly. I'll be starting with the story, and this does contain spoilers, so if you'd like to skip ahead, please move to this point in the video. The story of Cold Winter was pretty sick, and I want to get into that more. So, you play as Andrew Sterling, a former SAS member who now works for MI6. Andrew's been captured by the Chinese military and has been in prison for more than a year. Two old acquaintances of Andrew's, Daniel Parrish and Kim, save Andrew from the prison. As repayment for Andrew's gratitude to Parrish, he agrees to work for his private security firm. So Andrew gets sent to Egypt and uncovers a plot by terrorists to unleash Octopus, this weapon of mass destruction. While all of this is playing out, we're getting flashbacks and dialogue given by another character, John Gray. John Gray formed a secret society called the Grey Wings, whose sole purpose was to destroy nuclear weapons and nuclear threats around the world. Ultimately, however, they came to the conclusion that the only way they could possibly end the threat of total nuclear annihilation was to call the human population and cause a nuclear winter, because that makes sense, I guess. Anyway, Operation Cold Winter's goal was to supply the world's superpowers with their own Octopus guidance systems. Now, here's the real twist. These guidance systems were never guidance systems at all, and were intended to detonate in first world countries, decimating their populations. Gray had hired Parrish and in turn Andrew to go into Egypt and eliminate the arms ring as a way to prevent them from selling the guidance systems to an unintended recipient. By the end of the game, however, Gray has a change of heart and he goes against his own Grey Wings, teaming up with Andrew and disabling the Grey Wings' ability to detonate the weapons at all. Cold Winter is cancelled, with Gray making the ultimate sacrifice with his life. I actually really enjoyed the story of Cold Winter. I went into it expecting a macho, save-the-world type plot, but the twists and turns really kept me on my feet. The voice acting is a bit of a mixed bag. Some characters are comically bad to the point of silliness, like this guy.
A system so advanced, friends. So advanced and technological.
While the main cast of Andrew, Gray, and Kim are all excellent.
In how many different ways I could answer that?
The cutscenes are also a bit of a mixed bag. Most of them are great, and that's all fine and well, but there's just one in particular that sticks out to me as poor. I can't get that stabbing animation out of my head. What I'm trying to say is, even with all these issues, the story kept me involved right up until the credits rolled. Cold Winter is played from the first-person perspective and features some pretty cool mechanics. I want to first highlight just how many weapons are in this game. I read that there's 30 total. I mean, that's crazy, and I didn't even get to see every weapon across my playthrough. It's all military weaponry, so pistols, shotguns, SMGs, rifles, launchers, snipers, grenades, mines, etc. Due to just how many weapons there are, I'm just going to highlight a few of my personal favorites as opposed to all of them. So first off, I'm just going to talk about my favorite. The hammer. The hammer has almost everything I want in an FPS shotgun. It has the range, the power, and the mobility. It doesn't sound great, and honestly, none of the weapons in Cold Winter sound as punchy or bassy as I'd like them to be, but I still found a ton of fun in it. I also really liked any of the scoped assault rifles. The AUG and G11 were practically laser beams. High damage, little recoil, and big magazines made these super useful in taking out medium to far range targets. You're unable to aim down sight with any unscoped weapon in Cold Winter. It just sort of zooms the screen in a bit and makes your aim a bit more accurate, which makes scoped weapons extremely useful. Unsuppressed sniper rifles especially, because one shot to the head or any limb in that part of the body is blown off. Cold Winter has to have one of the best gore systems of a game from this era I have ever seen. We usually don't aim for limbs in FPS games, right? Why would you? It's less damage than the head or the chest typically, but in Cold Winter I found myself frequently aiming for arms and legs just to watch the dismemberment system wow me. Even then, dismemberment systems traditionally just use one region for each arm, one for each leg, and one for the head. Cold Winter goes one step further and allows you to take off hands, forearms, upper arms, feet, shins, thighs. It's brutal and satisfying, and one of the best displays of gore I have ever seen in a shooter, modern or retro. Blood sprays from your targets, sticking to walls behind them. If you approach corpses even, sometimes they'll even have flies buzzing around them. It's a unique detail I don't know if I've ever seen in a game before. Speaking on those unique details, the game features an awesome physics system that allows you to interact with the environment in ways you just don't see too often. You're able to flip over tables and other objects to use as cover. How cool is that? In addition, if you can change the orientation of your body and select the cover option again, it rotates the object to suit your position. Admittedly, I didn't use this too often in the later portions of the game due to the game already having static cover that did the job, but I'll explain this more in a bit. You can also pick up objects, throw them, drop them, drag them, etc. You'd sometimes have to move crates out of the way to access previously unreachable areas. And speaking of that, the game rewards exploration in a variety of ways. In addition to armor and ammo pickups, you're able to find crafting items. Yep, another unique feature to Cold Winter is the crafting system, which they've coined combining items. I don't think I've seen this system in a non-RPG this old before. It's incredibly simple and none of the recipes need to be found or anything, but it's still cool to see. You're able to craft weapons like Molotov cocktails and proximity mines, but you're also able to craft hacking devices and lockpicks. Those last two items enable you to open doors to rooms you weren't able to access otherwise, and lockers that contain more crafting items, weapons that may have been unavailable otherwise, and my personal favorite, intel. Intel isn't flashy or anything, but intel will give you hints about more unlockable areas, different potential paths in the level, and my favorite, stealth hints. Now, Cold Winter has a simple and straightforward stealth system. You crouch to sneak around, you use suppressed weapons to stay undetected, etc. It's nothing special or in-depth, but it works. There's one point in particular I want to talk about. I got to this gate here and I had no idea how to get in. So I walked back a bit and I saw this fence that said it was damaged, but I didn't have the tool to cut it open. In addition to this, the fence was electrified. So I went ahead and I backtracked the level a bit, and I found some intel that said I could bring this awning down to a building that I previously thought I couldn't access. So I went ahead and I brought it down, climbed into the top of the building, and I found the bolt cutters. So then I realized I could cut my way through the fence. So I went back to the fence, shot this transformer out to cut the power, and then cut my way through the fence and continued on. This is just one short example of Cold Winter's interactivity and its focus on problem solving. This example may have been mandatory to advance, but there are many smaller examples scattered throughout the game, and they're totally optional, and intel plays a vital role in figuring them out. So far, I've only really talked about the good when it comes to Cold Winter, so what's so bad about it? What makes this game a mixed bag? The biggest glaring issue for me when it comes to Cold Winter is the fact that it's a PlayStation 2 exclusive. And look, I love the PlayStation 2. It has so many exclusives that, even up until the modern day when you decide to watch this video, are still stuck on that platform. It was a great console in its day, and that's why so many people, like me, continue to go back and play its games. But in Cold Winter's case, it's just a detriment in almost every way. First off, the frame rate is all over the place. It's practically unplayable in scenes where there's lots of smoke, fire, and other debris. I did notice the frame rate dipped slightly when there were many enemies on screen or when I was firing certain weapons, but it was playable as opposed to the smoke issue I just mentioned. The gunplay itself and aiming were a huge pain in the ass for me, and I never really got the hang of it. I don't know what it is about these PS2 shooters, but I struggle big time to make the adjustments I need to, and it feels clunky to play as a result. I'm usually under-aiming or over-aiming, it doesn't really matter. Rarely do I get the perfect shot on my target. Is it the controller? Is it my setup? I don't experience these issues on any other platform of that era, so it's a bit baffling to me. I briefly mentioned that I wasn't able to take advantage of the mobile cover system later on, and I want to talk about that a little bit. So, the core level design just seems to change in the later levels. No longer are you always fighting through tight hallways or markets with lots of objects. You're duking it out in an open canyon, or maybe you're on a lift while snipers peck away at your health. Granted, after these short sequences, you do go back to those hallway type encounters, but for me, it didn't really suit the clunky gameplay, and I found myself taking more damage than I'd like to admit. With all of this said, I wanted to find out if it really was the PlayStation 2 holding the game back. I originally played the game on a backwards compatible fat PS3, but I decided that I should check it out on an emulator, so I went ahead and I booted up PCSX2 and played the first 2 levels. Now, I didn't run any patches or anything like that. All I did was upscale the game to my native monitor resolution, and I played with an Xbox One controller as opposed to the DualShock 3. I found that yes, while frame rate and visuals improved as expected, the gunplay is just as awful. It still felt like my inputs were delayed, and I found it really difficult to make micro adjustments across both platforms, that being the PS3 and the emulator. I believe that if Cold Winter was released on any other platform, that being the PC, Xbox, or even the GameCube, it could have benefited big time. An Xbox version was planned, but for whatever reason it was cancelled. The game released in 2005, the same year as the 360. I would have loved to see this game running as a launch title for it. It's also a prime candidate for a remaster, seeing as how Sierra is owned by Activision and, well, Activision is being bought out by Microsoft. I'd love to see Cold Winter be given another chance in a modern graphics engine with its existing physics and gore. I can just see it right now in my head, it looks amazing. If that remaster were to be released in the modern day, I think it'd be a hit. So with that out of the way and everything I've said up until this point, do I recommend Cold Winter? Well, if you're an FPS nut like I am, yes. I do think you should check it out. It's worth it just for the gore and the roster of weaponry. I'm not sure I'd recommend playing the game on actual hardware, but if you do decide to go that way, it's cheap these days and it won't burn a huge hole in your wallet. Cold Winter, even with its faults, gets a recommendation from me.